The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will recap the insane Leagues Cup match against Pumas. We'll preview Tuesday's match versus Monterrey, and we're going to be joined by Arch Bell for that. And then we'll also cover some other pieces of Austin FC news. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined once again on the road, Jeremiah Bentley.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I'm coming from Rhode Island this week. I was from Florida last week, and then when Mike was doing the shows for 2 weeks, I was in Antigua. So I'm like taking a tour of the Atlantic Ocean in some way, and I got to say the Rhode Island beach is very different from the Florida or Caribbean beaches, for sure. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. Doing this from another Marriott, and the cell service, the internet service seems a lot better than it was the last time I did one, I think, from Denver. So I'm excited about that. And then also I've had plenty of time to like watch the Olympics over the last few days, which is like a thing I think a lot of people get into every 4 years, and you find these like weird sports that you fall in love with. And for me, every year I fall in love with handball.
Oh yeah.
Like team handball is a great game. And I'm like, I'm going to get so into this game and I'm going to love it. And then I forget it the second the Olympics is over. And then 4 years later, I get super into it again. So I don't know if you have any experience like that with handball, or like what have you been watching?
No, handball. I remember the first time I watched handball many years ago, probably in college. And I don't even know if it was during the Olympics. I like lived at a friend's house who had this crazy like dish package with every channel imaginable. And I just watch weird sports sometimes. And so it might have been there, but I remember watching handball and turning it on and being absolutely perplexed by what I was watching, but really, really enjoying it. So yeah, I watched some handball the other day, watched some fencing, which I don't actually enjoy the fencing, but I was really intrigued by the equipment. Do you know about the equipment, Jeremiah?
No.
So the suits that they wear are attached to a cable. You'll see this cable like dangling behind them. And so that's attached to their suit and to their sword. And as the tip of the sword touches their opponent's suit, it closes a circuit. And that's how they can tell so accurately if a point was scored or not. It's like an electrical circuit that's being closed as the sword touches the suit. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Oh, that's super fascinating. And then right before we came on, I was watching like a kayak slalom.
Oh, I saw some of that too.
Which seems crazy. Like it was the men's competition. Those guys are just like so athletic. Like it was mind blowing how you could, because they rapidly rushing downhill flow of water, and the fact that they can like turn around and go back upstream and stuff like that seems insane.
I know you've probably heard people make the I guess joke or serious suggestion that they should let one normal person compete in every event just to show how hard it was. I think that one would be a hazard and would probably end in some casualties.
Right. And Bob went down the river and he was never seen again.
Upside down in a kayak for 35 seconds.
Yeah, so it's always good to watch. I mean, I think everybody loves like swimming and track, but like I love the getting into the other like random sports too. So, but Austin FC had an amazing, I think. Well, we can tell on ourselves a little bit, I think, before we talk about this Pumas match. We spent the last week assuming that Austin was getting knocked out in the group stage and figuring out how we were going to fill a month's worth of content, not having games to talk about. And golly, I think we were wrong, buddy.
Yeah, it looks that way. Where should we start for the story of the week, Jeremiah?
One of the things that really is of interest to me, and I don't know if it's just like kind of an anomaly, but like it was a good night for the veterans. I was going to say the old guys, but I feel like Driussi doesn't really fall into that group. So we get an Alex Ring opener with a Driussi assist. We get a Giassi Zardes goal, which is his fourth in the month of July, and then Ring returns the favor. Like we had a Driussi goal with a Ring assist. So it's just the people that have both Austin and the league have relied on. We're really like the sort of the bedrock of the club on Friday nights. That was really good to see.
Yeah, great to get contributions from whenever Alex Ring has a good game like that. It usually means good things for Austin FC. But Driussi, man, like that guy needed a win. He'd had a pretty bad little stretch. I think this was his first goal in 2 months. He got a red card. He had some games where we didn't even mention him except to say something bad about him. And so to see him come in to fight like he did in this game, to get the goal, to really contribute to the game without having to like force himself on it necessarily, that was really good to see. And I hope that is an omen for things moving forward.
Yeah, and then I think back on the ring point, the fact that he did good things and then didn't also give up a PK or get a red card or anything like that. Like that's like almost an Alex Ring hat trick to this point, where it was like it was just all upside. And then the Giassi Renaissance, I think, is great, and maybe it's not super sustainable. And I think Austin still needs another number 9. But to see him finally, almost 2 years in, gonna get on like a good run of form and score these kinds of goals, I think people have know and expect from him, but like real quality striker goals. Again, it's really great to see.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the two new guys, both of them getting starts in this game, which is great to see. Their games went a little differently from one another.
Yeah.
Bukari, of course, being sent off in the first half. I think in the 32nd minute was when he gets his second yellow. Judging his performance up until then, he had a few little flashes of his abilities in his short run out. One thing that I would like to comment on is that he was clearly very engaged in the defensive game plan, which I love to see, like checking his shoulders, making sure he's in the right position, passing guys off as he shifted positions. And it didn't always work out. Early on, Pumas gets a long distance shot that just misses wide. And as soon as they see that the ball goes wide, Alex Ring and Brendan Heinzike both turn and are glaring daggers at him, yelling at him, telling him that he wasn't in the right position to block the entry pass in. And so he's not always getting it right, but I really love seeing a high dollar attacker be engaged in the defensive game plan that way. Dessler, I thought, he wasn't super involved in any of the major moments of the night, but I thought he was really, really good.
Yeah, same. I think he looked really solid. He's still learning the game, and he talked in the press conference today about sort of just getting used to it and sort of the advantage of just getting thrown into the middle of the things, and you need to play soccer and rely on your instincts.
Yeah,
and I think that excites me about his long-term potential, which you talked about last week. Before, is the fact that he was able to do that and be effective in the time that he was there.
I guess that we should also talk about just how Austin played after they went down a man, and how it's kind of bizarre that they still at not as much as, which game was it that and against Dallas, where for a long stretch of the game after the red, we actually looked like the better team still. I don't know that we could say we outright looked like the better team in this one, but we're still very dangerous and scored pretty much right after going down to 10 men. So what is it about this team that helps them thrive in this scenario?
I don't know. I feel like this is a team that gets smarter when their backs against the wall, because they obviously, we'll get into the stats after the break, but they absorbed a lot of shots. If you look at the heat maps around the field, Austin is very defensive and very central, but everybody, and I think you talked about Driussi having this match, and I think Danny Pereira deserves a ton of credit for this. When the opportunities to counter and be direct were there, they were just they took advantage of it, and they were bold and they were courageous in doing that. And they were also able to get back sometimes when those didn't work out. I think that was the difference, is just that they just seemed to play smarter and understand the moments when their opportunity was there, and seize the moment every time that they could.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give some credit to the coaching staff in this one. I want to preface this because I know some of the responses I'm going to get is that I want to normalize a little bit the objective praise of a single game. I think this is a healthy way to go about it, but Josh Wolf did a good job once the red card happened. I think he saw where the changes needed to happen while also planning ahead for when Dessler inevitably met his minute limit. And I think anyone should be able to say that I think Josh Wolf shouldn't be the coach anymore. but also he had a good game tonight, and he did a good job managing the game after we went down a man.
I would agree with that, and I cannot help myself from being entirely too online. And so I saw a lot of this, people assuming that one game should change everybody's opinion about anything. And so, yeah, it was definitely a good night all the way around. It was a good night for the staff. I don't know that it changes like my feelings overall, but yeah, good on Austin.
Yeah,
and
I don't think one game should.
Performance.
Like you said, I don't think one game should change your opinion. And I am of the perspective, and have always been of the perspective, that the quality of the players and their performances are always going to be the main driver of a team's success in the micro and macro. But I think Josh Wolf and his staff deserve some credit for this one. But the players, man, like they fought so hard in this game, and you see so often in these CONCACAF competitions where the MLS team comes in and looks a little bit naive. They underestimate the bizarreness of the officiating and of the tone of the game that the Mexican team set. And Austin FC never looked naive in this game. They absolutely stepped up to the challenge. They looked like the nastier of the team at times, and we'll get into some specific moments later on. But I loved seeing these guys fight like this in this game. It was great. And then also seeing Jean Kolmanich coming off the bench at the last whistle and hugging the other fullbacks, just like celebrating as if he had scored the winning goal. Like, to see guys who didn't play. There's video of Obrion in the south end as the final seconds are ticking down, like acting like a cheerleader, kind of just like going crazy over there, cheering his teammates on. And like, I love seeing that kind of unity and that kind of like collective effort by everyone involved, and then everyone celebrating in that afterwards.
Yeah, and you didn't even touch on Brad Stuver's reaction to Steph Cleveland's save, which was insane. And I think back to your question, like, I don't know what. I mean, I guess it's like this team like has like collectively responds to adversity, and that's what makes them do that and cheer for each other. And like, I don't know how we bottle this up and apply it to a Wednesday night in Nashville or whatever, right? Like, why I don't really get why this team plays that way, but when they do and when they're all there for each other, like there's still something special. There's still something like a little bit 22 about this team when they're all collectively called together to rise to the occasion.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and discuss the rest of the match events, which there are quite a few notable ones to discuss. So hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education, and they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
Landon, we just read those backwards, didn't we?
Keep going.
It's fine. You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law.
Sometimes shaking things up is how you keep a relationship fresh, Jeremiah.
I love it. Thank you.
Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts can help you get more mileage for your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. There's a lot to discuss here, Jeremiah. Where should we start off? Maybe with our pregame narratives.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a lot that we need to go into beyond what we already talked, but I think the expectations were low, and we kind of mentioned that off the top, given how Austin has performed in tournaments before, and given the quality of play. Josh Wolf talked about maybe seeing some more Austin FC2 players. I believe there were 6 or 7 that were named in the initial 30-player roster. We didn't end up seeing any of those, but that was the question. And then one of the big things is just like what would the crowd would be like on that night, given sort of two factors. One, that both supporters, the two biggest supporters groups, pushed out statements against sort of this match, with Austin Anthem specifically calling for a boycott, and Los Verdes being a little more mild. But and then also knowing that like Pumas is a huge team that's going to have a lot of fans, and so what would the crowd and energy be like in the stadium that night? And luckily, I think the fears about the worst possible outcomes were not met, and it was an electric environment. And I think the match on the field probably had a lot to do with how that was displayed. But ultimately, none of those like real big questions ended up like playing into the results of the match.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge like what the split of fans was in the stadium. Partially, like I think like jersey color has a little bit to do with it. Like whenever Tigres came, it was pretty easy to see the yellow sticking out all over, but a lot of the shirts that Pumas fans were wearing were white, and they have like kind of that pale gold color, that bronzy color. And so it was hard to kind of clock people around the stadium and tell what the split was, but it did still feel like when Austin FC did something big, it was louder than when Pumas did something big, but it was still quite loud whenever Pumas did something big.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that wasn't a pregame storyline was who the goalkeeper would be, which turned into, I believe, probably the biggest surprise when we get the lineup out. So we see the Steph Cleveland making his first appearance, I think, in like a year. Is what we saw in the broadcast. Definitely the first appearance for Austin.
Yeah.
So Josh Wolf said in the presser today that it was an illness for Stuver on Monday, which means we're probably likely to see Brad again on Tuesday. Then on the back line, we get Biru, Heinzike, Hedges, and Dessler. We get Pereira, Ring, and Driussi in the midfield, and then Gallagher, Zardes, and Bukari up top, which is not surprising. I noticed you did write the little C by Alex Ring in the lineup, which I think we should. You want to go ahead and talk about that now?
Yeah. One thing on the goalkeeper first. I did not notice until we were about to kick off that it was Steph Cleveland in goal, because I just don't look at that spot on the lineups anymore. It's always Brad Stuver. Why wouldn't it be Brad Stuver? So I just don't even look at it. And so to see Cleveland come in, and like you said, Wolf said that it like Stuver had a little bit of illness. It kind of seemed like if it were a different game or like a league game or a knockout thing, that Stuver probably would have gone. But Wolf, the way Wolf talked about it, it sounded to me like they wanted to try to get Cleveland on the field since they didn't play in Open Cup. That's a lot of times that's where you'll see backup keepers get minutes. And that's like a way to kind of like they do this all over the world, right? It's like throw your backup keeper a bone and let him get a game somewhere. And usually you use cup competitions to do that. I thought it was just that when I saw the lineup, and the way that Wolf talked about it was like, we want to play Stuver, but he's a little sick and we'd like to get Cleveland on the field. So let's just take this opportunity to do it. And we'll talk more about Cleveland's performance, the ups and downs of it later on. But yeah, Alex Ring wearing the captain's armband, which is not a new thing. We've seen that happen this season, but always whenever Driussi was not on the field. And this time we had both of them on the field, and Alex Ring was still wearing the captain's armband. And Josh Wolf had talked about this in media availability. Do you remember exactly what he said or the way he phrased this?
It was just a Josh Wolf kind of non-answer. If that's I don't have these specific quotes. I almost posted them in here, but I didn't. But
he said something about like, we want to do what we can to get the best out of Seba. And like, I feel like you could read that almost as like, you could read it a lot of ways, but it could be like, we're taking the pressure off of him. Or you could say like, it's a punishment because of getting the red card or like whatever. Like, I think either you could read it either way and be maybe right.
I took that to be they're taking that he wants to take the pressure off him. But then in the other part of that statement, he didn't say like this is a permanent change or anything either, right? It's like, we're going to take it match by match. And I think I've kind of missed this in traveling, but I think one interesting thing where this may be an argument in favor of Ring keeping it is this idea that MLS is going to start really enforcing only the captain can address the referees in controversial situations. And I think that's one where you probably want somebody like Alex Ring or maybe Julio Cascante like doing that just because of their personality, and who
Yeah.
they are, and having to be a vocal leader on the field, where that hasn't necessarily always been the thing that's most important about a captain, but it may be more relevant going forward.
Yeah. I mean, language barrier aside, like Driussi does speak English, not as well as some of the other players on the field, but also just, yeah, like you said, the personality. Like, uh, I don't know how much talking to the ref is actually going to change anything, but there is some like marginal finessing you can do to like get a guy on your side. And yeah, I would much. There's a lot of guys on the team I would trust to do that better than Driussi, just because of his temperament and personality is not the type to really be a talker at all.
And I've got a little bit of like Alex Ring is probably going to yell at the ref anyhow. So if he's the one authorized to do it, he probably
Yeah.
saves some trouble from himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then John Gallagher gets to start on the wing. I'll say I'll probably mention him later on, but I liked this here. I know I've said many shows in a row that I don't like John Gallagher playing in the attack in a game where you kind of expect to be under a lot of pressure and you're going to need some more defensive work from that position. I'm pretty happy with John Gallagher there, and I think he did a good job. And then as the game gets squirrely and you need to shift guys around, Gallagher plays two different positions after playing winger throughout the rest of the night, and that's the kind of just flexibility he has in his game, and that ended up being a really big asset for Austin on the night.
Well, let's get into, I think the statistics are what they are. Maybe let's get into the major game events being like goals, cards, and everything else that happens on this crazy night. I think we can talk about sort of the flow of the game and how the numbers end up where they are given the game states that are created.
Yeah, I guess we get the first goal pretty early on, 8th minute. I can't remember how the ball got to this part of the field. Do you remember if it was a goal kick or something on this one? How did Austin get it in the final third there?
I don't remember on this one how it ended up there.
In any case, like I think Zardes is in a challenge for a ball. It falls to Driussi. He squares it across the top of the box to Alex Ring, and Alex Ring takes the touch and is like facing up a defender, and he's doing that thing where you kind of drive the ball at him and make them make a decision. And he has Dessler streaking up the right hand side. And I was really wanting him to play that ball, that like slip that ball into Dessler and let him square it across the box for Driussi, who is running in. And as he shoots it, I'm like cursing him. Like as he winds his leg up to shoot, I'm like, Alex, don't shoot this ball. Do not do it. And then it slips into that far post. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. But he like ended up being a really good finish. It seemed a little lucky in the moment, but upon the replay, it's just a good finish. But I think there's still some credit due to his teammates in this setting. Dessler's run ends up pulling one of the defenders wide a little bit, and then you've got Driussi, who makes a run after he plays that ball as well and kind of pulls the defender towards him and opens up that channel for Ring to take that shot through. So that's going to be a theme in some of these other goals as well, which we'll get to. But yeah, good finish, but also just good movement from the other guys to kind of pin some of those defenders down.
Yeah, he hit the ball well, and he hit the ball in the perfect spot. And it seemed like maybe the keeper was screened a little bit too from it, because it seems like one that was just like with the distance, the fact that it was on the ground, like it seems like one that he maybe should have been able to get to and wasn't. And then I guess the next big, we didn't realize it was going to be big, but the Osman Bukari yellow, 28 minutes in, becomes like one of the next major moments in the match.
Yeah, and I'll say after this goal, like Pumas starts to push a little harder because Austin, this was not a fluke goal. Austin looked good in the start of the match. They looked like they were up for it and like being like able to play with this Pumas team. And then after the goal, Pumas starts to push a little, showing their teeth a little bit more. And then, 27th minute, we get this Bukari yellow card. It's a goal kick. It gets flicked forward. Bukari and Duarte, one of their defenders, both go for the ball. Duarte gets there first. There is contact. There's a foul called. There's a yellow given. They show the replay, and Bukari doesn't go in super hard. He doesn't even really extend his leg out. On some of the angles, it barely looks like there's even contact. I think you can tell that there is, but it did not look like a yellow to me. Max Bretos and Brian Dunseth on the English language broadcast were both perplexed, even in the moment, not even in hindsight after the second one, but in that moment, they're like, oh, that's harsh. I don't think that's a card right there. And then just a few minutes later, the second one comes. So Pumas gets into a dangerous area on the edge of the box. Austin blocks it. Ring eventually just kind of clears it up the line to relieve pressure. Bukari comes in to challenge for the ball and lifts his boot super high. It goes to VAR, but it seems like the VAR check, like the series of events here was a little confusing, but I think the VAR check was to see if it was a straight red, that the yellow card was never in question. Like, it is a yellow at minimum. Let's look at VAR to see if it's a red. It's not a red. Okay, here's your yellow. But like, that specific moment is a very deserved yellow, and Bukari needs to be smarter here. But it's still really, really annoying that the referee put him in that situation by giving such a soft yellow on the first one.
Yeah, but do you think, is that where he needs to be? And maybe it's just like getting accustomed to the game or whatever after not playing for a little bit. But like, should he be smart enough not to go up like that, knowing he's already on a yellow?
Absolutely. Yeah, he deserves some blame here because it's a silly thing, because it's not like the guy surprised him. He actually hip checks him and then throws his foot up. So sometimes, you see guys throw a foot up and a guy kind of comes out of their blind spot and they kick him in the head or whatever. Like, this is not what happened. Bukari hip checks the guy and then throws his leg up in that spot. So he absolutely needs to be smarter, but it's still really annoying.
No, that's fair. And again, it wasn't a super dangerous position either at that point. So other than, you kind of mentioned in the opening about sort of taking advantage, or just the CONCACAF-iness of this all sometimes, and the referee. So I think the first card was for sure an example of not a great night. But like, do you have other ones? Like, do you feel like it was overall a poor night from the ref, or do you think it was just magnified because of the net effect of that really soft yellow card on Bukari?
I will say that in the moment, like in the stadium, I thought it was a really poor performance. On the rewatch and the broadcast, I feel like it was not as bad as I initially thought, but I still feel like it was fairly inconsistent on the way certain things were called. And like, again, Bretos and Dunseth on the broadcast were like, I think they literally said, like, Austin's not getting any calls here. Like, one thing's a foul in one spot, one thing's not a foul in one spot. And then a few things that ended up being like less consequential, but are still just annoying that they're getting them wrong. Like, on the near side, my near side, where I sit on the east side, so it would have been the far side for the camera angle. I think someone goes in for a challenge and the Pumas player is laying on the ground and like rolls over and pushes the ball out of bounds with his body, and they give them the throw. And there's like the center ref was not that far. The line judge was not super far either. And so just some really small things that you expect refs at this level to get right. And then, I still was not pleased with the performance, but it was not as bad as I initially thought.
Well, so with Bukari going out, obviously ton of the ball for Pumas, and it would get even more so. I think I was looking at the possession stats in the second half, and I think they had, I believe it was 82% possession in the second half. But despite all that,
sorry, one thing I did want to mention about the refereeing again is not long after the red card, Driussi takes a hard shoulder to the jaw and is not even called for a foul. And sometimes Driussi goes down and he kind of milks stuff either to give himself rest or to kind of slow a game down or whatever. And I thought that's what was happening in the stadium. But on the broadcast, there's an angle they showed where his head snaps back and he like actually took a really hard blow on his jaw, and just nothing, no call at all on that one. And that's annoying. But yeah, sorry, you were going somewhere before I interrupted you.
Go ahead. No, it's all good. I'm glad that you can get that energy out of you. No, so like Austin absorbing a ton of pressure, but then we get a Giassi Zardes goal assisted by Danny Pereira. And we'll talk about this afterward, but like Danny Pereira had another like great night, and it was good to see him on this night. Do it. I think it was like super good to see him do it on the field with Driussi there at the same time. Because I think the last performance he had where he was kind of like a linchpin of the attack was when Driussi was out. But a great play here from him and a good finish from Driussi.
Yeah, absolutely. So as after the red, Pumas ends up subbing on their superstar Huerta, who had been on the bench. So this is a thing we didn't mention, but Pumas did not start their first choice, especially in the attack. I think it was mostly their kind of a front line where they left off. Both, like either of the guys who are normally their starting strikers were not on the pitch, and then Huerta was not on the pitch, and yeah, they go. So that was like a concerning thing, but yeah, Austin's able to get this goal back almost immediately, and so Austin is in possession here, and Pumas is pressing really hard. Biru, it kind of gets trapped over on his touch line, and so he plays a ball up the line just to kind of relieve pressure. Their right back lets it run past him and turns towards his goal. And as he's letting that ball run, Danny Pereira has his ears pinned back, and this guy has no idea. And so he just runs past him, sneaks up on him, takes the ball, and he's off. And so he drives inside towards the goal. Driussi makes a really hard run near post. And again, this is talking about that movement that kind of helps the other players make their lives easier, I guess. But he makes a run near post and takes a defender with him. Gallagher is making a far post run and kind of pins a defender that side. And as this is happening, Jossy Zardes is running right up the gut, kind of arriving a little bit later than everyone else. Danny Pereira squares it right into his stride, and Zardes side foots it past the keeper. And so really good finish here. But I want to talk about Danny Pereira. So as I was rewatching this game on the broadcast, I found this clip and posted it to our social media channels of it was accidental. Like they were just kind of showing where the free kick was going to happen. And you see Danny turn as they're getting set after this red card. And he looks at his teammates and says, "Dale, dale, con huevos." And makes the international, I don't think I need to translate this. I think even our monolingual listeners will know what this means. And if you didn't watch the clip, and you'll see the slightly vulgar hand gesture that goes along with it, that should help you translate a little bit better. But Danny was charging around the field, just looked like a man on a mission all night. He was so good in this game and gave these instructions to his teammates, but was like leading by example and like listening to them himself. And just a really great game from him. And so again, really glad to see these guys rise to the occasion and just kind of flip that switch. And Josh Wolf said this in one of the media availabilities, like the game changed, and it changed very quickly, and the players understood the assignment once it changed and just did an excellent job once that happened. So Danny Pereira deserves a lot of credit for this goal, for just going after it, chasing this ball down, winning it, driving into the box, and then making something happen.
Yeah, and he's the skill that he brings to the table, I think, is just like his ability to dribble past people, right, and advance the ball with his feet is something that almost nobody else on this club has. And it was so good to see him to do that decisively and do that in a way that almost always had a positive result. And so it kind of seemed like Austin was going to get to the half with a 2-0 lead. And then in added time in the first half, Pumas gets one back from Ali Avila.
Yeah, this is dying minutes of the first half. They play a long ball over the top that finds Huerta in the box. He kind of crosses up Biru, puts in, just like drives a ball across the six. Cleveland mishandles it. And then Avila meets it at the back post and just pokes it in. Cleveland really should have done a lot better here. Like this is one of the moments that like you really miss Brad Stuver and or feel a little bit spoiled. I think there's some stuff that Cleveland did that was fine or a little bit understandable, but we just are used to having the sure hands of Brad Stuver back there. And I think this is one of those moments where keepers spill stuff like this sometimes, but Stuver doesn't. And I think they reviewed this one. It looked really close to offside. The angle, at least on the broadcast, did not look good enough to actually overturn that. I'm guessing the officiating crew didn't have a better angle than that. And so, yeah, certainly not enough to confirm or overturn anything. And so Austin goes into the half leading 2-1 instead of 2-0.
Yeah, and how were you feeling at the half? Like I was not feeling very confident at that point after conceding that goal because it seems like a thing that Austin has done where they concede a goal and then it just kind of goes downhill from there. And luckily it didn't, but I didn't have a lot of confidence at that point in time.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. I like felt. Oh, so the folks I was sitting with, my friend PJ was sitting with me, and after the first goal, or maybe after the red card, he kind of like jokingly said, "Okay, we just have to hold on for 60 minutes. That's all we have to do." And then once we got the second goal, it was like, "Oh, actually, no, that's all we have to do is hold on for 50 minutes or so." And so I was actually feeling pretty good until that goal. And then, yeah, it was a roller coaster ride like that all night, pretty much, where like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. Okay, I feel much less good about this. Okay, I feel pretty good about this. I feel much less good about this. But I want to talk about the kind of the tactical shift after the red card. So we kind of just went to a 4-4-1 in the immediate aftermath. Driussi and Gallagher as the wingers, and then Zardes up top on his own. At halftime, they sub on Owen Wolf, comes on for Zardes. And so they go to 5 at the back. And in this little interim period, Biru goes to one of the third center back in that back 5. Gallagher slots in as the left wing back, and Dessler's playing the right wing back with Driussi up top as the striker on his own. And so this is the part that I thought was just like well done by the coaching staff here, recognizing this so quickly and making the change. But at the end of the half, when we were still just kind of in that 4-4-1, the fullbacks were having to pull wide to cover the wide areas. But they, like Pumas, even when we had 11 men, Pumas was throwing a lot of numbers forward and kind of had a line of 5 across the front with other guys rotating in and a lot of movement there. So whenever we just had those back 4 against 10 versus 11, the fullbacks would pull wide to cover those wide spaces, and the midfielders were having to drop back into the back line to cover that space that they were leaving. So there's a lot of rotating, a lot of shuffling, and pretty frantic. And so whenever they shifted to that back 5, it allowed those wing backs to push out and pressure those wide areas while still having some numbers in the central spaces. And that let the midfielders play a little more calmly and just get a little bit settled in that area and not play so frantic. So I thought that shift was really well done. And then just the personnel part of it, like Owen and Gallagher are just so flexible and can play in so many spots that bringing Owen off the bench, I think, is such a good weapon, because you know that as you make other changes, and you know Dessler's going to have to come off at some point, that you can start to shift guys. And so when Dessler does come off, you just move Gallagher over to the right side. Biru goes back to wing back, and you have another center back on there. But I think all of that, the personnel and the tactical shifts, was really well managed.
Yeah, no, I think Owen had a really strong night overall. And
Absolutely,
I think to your point, like this is the best. I think it's the best use of Owen Wolf right now at his age, is like coming off the bench and sort of be able to play calm. And there's just like maybe it's being like a coach's kid or whatever, but there's like a quality that he has on the ball and sort of like an attention to decision making that he has that like does bring calm. You know, that I think that honestly, like, not everybody on the team has. Like, and it was good to see it. It was the right thing. It was the right thing in the moment.
And then he's got this athletic ability to like make some of those things happen as well. Because seeing something is one thing, but being able to just push past a guy with one touch is not a thing that you can learn. It's a thing you have or you don't.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it was a good night for him. Great use of players by coaches. And then Austin, we get the Driussi goal at 55 with an assist from Ring that puts Austin back up 3-1. And again, for temporarily, for maybe 15 minutes, like makes everybody feel comfortable and breathe slowly again.
Yeah, Austin was defending deeply and having to absorb a lot of pressure. And then they did a good job of, like, as we were able to push forward, you had Owen and Danny who were able to kind of dribble out of pressure at times. And then you had Gallagher running up and down, and he was able to be an outlet a few times. And this is what happens on this one is Gallagher gets out. He's driving up the left side, puts in a cross and wins a corner. Alex Ring takes the corner. His first try, gets headed back out. But if you watch the replay back, you can see Driussi. He's kind of lurking on the back post as the first attempt gets headed back out, but it falls right back to Alex Ring for another try. And so everyone kind of like resets, like the defense is pushing their offside trap a bit higher. All of the guys in the box kind of move with it, and everyone's resetting to go again. Caicedo, one of their central midfielders, sees Driussi hanging on the backside. And then you have Avila, one of their forwards, is back there as well. And Caicedo turns and tells Avila 3 times to mark Driussi. He says, like, he points at him and then turns and then points again. And then Alex Ring just hits a beauty of a cross towards the back post. And then Driussi just runs casually past Caicedo and Avila. Neither of them know he's there until the ball's on his foot. And so the ball lands on his foot. He sidesfoots it into the roof past the keeper. And again, just like he needed that one. Like this is really, really good for him. And hopefully it can kind of bring him out of the funk that he's been in.
Yeah, and I think a common theme among all 3 of those goals, we get a Ring goal, Zardes goal, and Driussi goal ultimately, is they were all in moments where we've seen them be in the right place and fail in the past, right? Like Ring taking a big shot and being off target. Giassi Zardes like being in the right place and not being too slow to like find the touch that gets into the goal. Like Driussi doing this, and then I think a couple weeks ago, like just sort of scuffing the ball or whatever. So like it's really, really good to see that, in a moment where I think Austin ended up having only 4 shots on target all night long, that they did such a good job of taking the opportunities that were presented to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Austin's up 3-1. In the 63rd minute, we see another sub. Cascante comes on for Dessler. Again, Dessler was really, really good, but he was always going to have a limit. And it was just a question of like how long the sports science staff gave him and like how he was looking. You can kind of start to see him dragging a little bit if you watch the game back. But he did his part in the CONCACAFing and took his time getting off the field and kind of acted like he didn't know his number got called. And then Julio gets into the box. I think it was a corner kick that he came in on. And so he gets into the box and immediately gets into a fight with someone.
Yes. Yeah, right. The second he walks out of the field, it wasn't even like a thing that had been brewing all night long.
And then Heinz Eich was also seemed like he was looking for a fight all night long. But this is when we kind of shift. Biru goes back to left wing back. Cascante slots into the middle 3, and then Gallagher shifts over to right wing back. So the next Pumas goal comes in the 72nd minute. So they're kind of working the perimeter of the Austin defense. They get a cross in from the left side that finds Mimote Martinez, who is normally their starter and was one of the guys on the Liga MX All-Star team. And his name, I was not familiar with this guy, but his name is great. So his name is Guillermo Martinez, and normally Memo is just like a nickname for someone named Guillermo, but he's Mimote, which means big Memo. And I thought that was great because he's like 6'3" or 6'4" or something like that. So it's a really good cross in, really good aerial ability from Martinez here. I think the coverage in the box here like could have been and maybe should have been a little bit tighter, but also Mimote, like he's just big, and it was a good cross and good, like a good leap and a good header there. So the lead shrinks once again. Austin almost pulls it back immediately, where Cleveland, on the kickoff, they'll drop it back to the keeper and he'll boot it long, and they'll try to like take some space doing that. And so Cleveland's ball is recovered by Pumas. They play it back towards goal. And again, Danny Pereira on his horse to put pressure on them in the back as they're trying to play out. The keeper hits a little bit too casual of a pass, and Pereira is able to get a foot on it, but his speed and the speed of the ball was such that he was never going to really control it. But it ends up being like almost a shot and goes wide. But that would have been glorious if it had actually gone in there and Austin was able to steal another one there. It didn't in the end, but I love the tone setting here from Danny Pereira to say, like, we're not done. This is not over. We're still going to come after you, and you need to fight us.
Yeah, and you hit on a really good point. Is this team down a man with the lead, never sat back. And I feel like that's been a criticism too, right? Is like Austin's going into bunker. Obviously, like tactically, you have to line everybody up a certain way, but like people were taking advantage of moments. And the one thing I was going to say on the second Pumas goal is like, and I think we both like felt like Steph Cleveland had a very uneven evening, but like that second goal was not one that that's not one that Brad Stuber is going to save either. Like that one was not on him. Like he had moments, like he had shaky moments on non-goals too, where the defense had bailed him out, but like that one was not one that anybody would have been able to stop.
Yeah, this is one where I think we feel the most spoiled when comparing Stuver to Cleveland, where Stuver has saved goals like that this season, even like probably more than once, but it's not one you would expect a goalkeeper to save. And so, yeah, I'll have some criticisms of Cleveland for this game, but this is not really one where I'm going to blame him too much.
That's the end of the goal scoring on the Knights. Then Austin just rides it out 3-2, right? Easy peasy peasy. Nothing dramatic happens beyond then.
I mean, Austin does a really good job of still absorbing the pressure throughout the rest of this game, sending balls out to Driussi, and he tries to hold it up. And then once he runs out of options, he'll just kick it upfield or try to bounce it off a guy for a throw in or something. And then occasionally Owen will get the ball and dribble a few dudes and then kind of run into a dead end and then kick the ball out of bounds or something. And so that's kind of the plan. And it's like not a great plan, but they're doing a pretty good job of it. And then I want to give a shout out to John Gallagher here, because Huerta, he was involved in that goal right before the half. But there was a long stretch of this game, like the beginning of the second half, where Gallagher just had this guy in his pocket and he was not doing anything. And as the game goes on, he ends up getting more into it and being a bit more effective. But Gallagher did a really good job marking him. And he ends up getting a really big chance in the 81st minute where a curled shot skims off the crossbar. We see some subs at 83. So Valencia comes on for Pereira. And Pereira, I mean, the ground covering he did on the night, like there's no way he could have gone much longer than this, I don't think. And so glad to see him go off and have a guy like Valencia, who like, this is what Valencia is built for, right? Is this kind of game. So, and then Rubio comes on for Driussi. Driussi seemed to be cramping a little bit. So again, this is just go out and fight some dudes, essentially. 87th minute. Pumas finds Huerta in the half space on the edge of the box. He turns. Cascante does a pretty good job of kind of pushing him wide and harassing him to the end line. We see Huerta try to play in a cross, and it kind of trickles out for a goal kick. I see him on the ground complaining. Cascante doesn't act like anything happened, so I'm like, okay, this is fine. They take it to VAR. If you watch the replay on VAR, it shows that Cascante goes in to challenge the cross that he thinks is going to be played with Huerta's left foot. Huerta actually goes for a Rabona. And so you'd expect the right foot to be the plant foot, and you challenge across that foot to block the cross. And what ends up happening, his plant foot ends up being his left foot crossed over, and Cascante steps right onto his ankle. And so I think, yeah, on the replay, it's a very clear penalty. But what happens after this is crazy. So Austin players are immediately crowded around the penalty spot. Hedges and Ring are both squared up to Pumas players. And then this is maybe one of I can't decide if the Con Huevos part of the replay that I watched or this part are my favorite bits. But as they're like kind of trying to clear guys off the penalty spot and get everything settled down, you see a clear shot of Matt Hedges, who with two referees standing right on the penalty spot, almost touching him and like very much looking at him. He walks up and scuffs the penalty spot and digs his heel into it and then walks away. There's like, I guess he's not worried about getting caught for that. And Bretos also found that very entertaining on the broadcast and was commenting on like how spicy and contentious this game was for it being the first time these two teams have ever played each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was that was super. I guess there was no doubt on the penalty. Again, it's like one that's unfortunate. And then lining up for, I don't know, what I expected to be heartbreak again. And, this is one where like this is a penalty save, right? This is not a miss kick.
Right.
This is not nothing went wrong. Like Cleveland guessed right, and then also made a really athletic play to save the ball beyond that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he just guessed right or if he read it, because Mimote does do kind of one of those like stuttered runs where they try to read the keeper. And I think Cleveland does a good job of kind of standing his ground, but they showed an angle on the broadcast from like behind the taker, and it looks like Cleveland just reads it. I don't think it was even a guess. So I think he reads it and goes the right way, and then is able to read the path of the ball and like reach a hand down. So the ball didn't just hit him. He read it right and then had to actually make a play to push the ball wide. And so it goes out, everyone's going crazy celebrating, and then you kind of see them realize like, oh, it's a corner. We need to
it's a corner,
defend.
Right?
And
yeah, you see Cleveland shoving everybody, right? Cleveland's like,
yeah.
Everybody's excited for him, and he's in the middle of like, no, we have a corner to defend before this game's over.
Yeah, so I want to just like kind of put a bow on the Cleveland assessment here. So he's very clearly getting his flowers for this penalty save. I thought he was quite poor almost every other part of the game. There were, on the first goal, he spills that ball. There's a few other moments where there's balls up in the air that should just be kind of routine catches that he drops. Did not command his box very well, did not have very sure hands. He was making me extremely nervous. So kudos to him for reading this pin and making the save, but I cannot wait for Brad Stuver to be back between the sticks on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I agree. And Brad was like such a proud dad, like after the penalty too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the ending. Austin fends off a few more attacks from Pumas. The clock ticks to the allotted 7 minutes, but because of the VAR review and the scuffle before the penalty, the clock ticks past 100. In this sequence, Valencia and Rubio are just flying around like cannonballs on the field. Like they're being absolute nuisances. And I loved watching it. And then, yeah, the whistle finally blows, I think at 100 minutes and 10 seconds or something like that. And give Austin the huge upset after playing like inarguably a superior opponent down a man for over 70 minutes.
Yeah. What an incredible. So I think we talked about every player that I wanted to talk about. So I think what I would just like to sort of wrap this segment up with is, where does this rank for you among the club's biggest wins? Let's maybe say biggest wins at home. Because that just throws out Den Verde really is the only option for like biggest wins overall. But like, where does this sit for you?
I mean, I think you have, just because of the significance of them, I think you have to put the 2 playoff wins in 2022 above it. I think you might put the 4-1 home game against LAFC that same season above it, just because kind of the narrative that whole season was like, Austin's not actually good. LAFC's the real good team in this league or in this division this year. And it just like whipped him like that. That was really special. I mean, yeah, you could like other meaningful ones, like the first win in the inaugural season. But I mean, is there any others besides those 3 that you would put above it, or would you put it above any of those?
No, I was going to I was thinking practically, both playoff wins, but I think for drama, I think it's top 3. I think it's LA. I think it's the PK shootout win at home in the first playoff game. And I think it's this one, like just as far as like overall excitement. And we'll see what this means. I mean, maybe Austin gets blown out on Tuesday and finishes like the terrible rest of the season and we all forget about this. But like in the moment, like I feel like it's definitely near the very top of performances that we've seen from this club, which gives me a lot of enthusiasm going into the match on Tuesday night. Yeah.
So let's maybe frame what this means for Leagues Cup. So this gives us a very high chance of going through to a knockout game, right?
Right. So yes. So Austin now on 3. So any result on Tuesday leaves Austin in the knockout round. And even if Austin loses because of the various tiebreakers, like there's a very good potential that Austin will make it to the knockout round anyhow with a loss, as long as it's like a close loss. Like Austin doesn't need to get blown out, because after head-to-head goal differential becomes the next tiebreaker. And so like Austin's looking really good now with a +2, but like Austin needs to keep it tight against Monterrey too.
Yeah, but then if Monterrey will be the favorites against the final game of this group, which is against Pumas. If Monterrey beats Pumas, it doesn't matter what happens on Tuesday. We're through.
True. Yep. Yeah. So Austin has really done a good job of putting itself in a position that as Austin fans, we don't know that the club has ever been in a knockout competition where like any result is good. And even if we don't get one, things will still be okay.
Yeah. I mean, and just ride it. I mean, I just like, I want to see him just enjoy it. Just go out and play, like have fun with this because the stakes are low. We're playing with house money at this point. So just go out, have fun, play soccer, try to take down these giants. If you don't, maybe you'll get this knockout game. And like, just from a very functional standpoint, just playing another game is going to be good for the team as well. And in the standpoint of like getting Bukari back on the field and playing and getting some minutes, getting Dessler more match fit, maybe getting closer to Svatok being ready to go and getting to play at least a little bit in a game. And then like Bukari missing this next one is a real shame because that's really the thing I was most excited about for this tournament was getting these guys playing. And now he's not going to play in this next game. So I think us getting to that third one will be really big, both for just kind of the prestige of winning something, but also from very practical reasons of just getting more minutes for these new guys and getting them integrated in the team and not giving yourself such a long break before starting the MLS season back up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the actual, you can be in training all day long, but like actual matches like make a big difference in terms of being fit and being prepared.
Yeah, and I imagine they'll schedule some scrimmages or something during that break, but doing it under the lights in a game that means something is always going to be way more useful.
All right, well, let's maybe take a break. We're going to talk to Arch about the rest of the Monterrey match, and then we'll cover a little bit of Austin FC news, and then we'll call it a show.
All right, hang tight. We'll be right back.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space, from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and support Austin FC's march to the playoffs. And I'm editorializing here, but I'm going to assume they're proud to support Austin FC's march to a Leagues Cup title as well.
Perfect.
And as we mentioned last week, they are not at all concerned with Copa Teos, a trophy that I've never even heard of. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information.
Moon Tower Soccer is also brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match, so fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. We are going to preview the Monterrey match with Arch Bell. If you guys don't know who Arch Bell is, he was kind of this mysterious figure to me in Austin, where I was like writing for these pretty big outlets, like wrote for Marca for a while and wrote for CONCACAF, like the body of CONCACAF for a while. But so I'd see his like bylines and these national things and like covering big stories, and then found out he lived in Austin. And then finally got to meet him. He's just like a really good dude and like fun to hang around with too. And so, really happy to get him on the show finally, because he's a fount of knowledge when it comes to CONCACAF and the teams that play in it. So we'll get to that here in a moment. But first, Jeremiah, let's go through a few bullet points of Austin FC news here.
All right. The first thing was that on Saturday night, Austin FC 2 won the 2024 MLS Next Pro Invitational, which I didn't know was an actual trophy, or I don't think it's actually a tournament, but
it wasn't until last week.
It doesn't matter. Now, the second most important trophy in sports on this. But yeah, against Cancun FC, they pick up the 2-1 win. Austin gets a goal from Micah Burton and one from Alonso Ramirez. So very much familiar names to everybody. And both goals assisted by CJ Fodre. Also a name familiar to everybody. So good to see all those guys getting action. Good to see that team pick up a win. Good to see. I think a pretty decent little crowd at Palmer Field. So to see them emerge as the Invitational Trophy winners, and Micah Burton takes home the MVP for his performance in the match.
Yeah, great to see. We also got an announcement last week that the women's national team is going to be playing at Q2 versus Iceland. So that's exciting to see some more national team play coming to Q2. What else we got, Jeremiah?
We got another one of these charts that shows that Austin is worth a lot of money. This one's from Forbes, which shows Austin is number 8 in MLS.
Did Sportico have us at 7?
Sportico had Austin at 7. Yes, right. So it's close, but not exactly the same, but in the same general area. And then you get the traditional complaining about how Austin should spend some of that money on a number 9 from people who don't understand how salaries work in MLS.
They spend a lot of money, man.
I know, right? Right. I guess, yeah, that's the takeaway in all these. It's not that Austin's not trying and not spending money. It's the fact that Austin, for a long time, spent money poorly.
Right. Yeah, and as a fan, again, I've said this on the show many times whenever we see these, I don't think it matters a lot, but you'd rather see your team closer to the top than closer to the bottom, because it means that they do have some more resources to spend on like record signing Osman Bukari. And then we'll talk about this player rumor that came out today, I think, is some reports from, I'm not sure where this guy's based, maybe in Germany, but he's a reporter for Sky Sports, saying that a Slovakian player for Boavista, striker, 24 years old, named Robert Bozanic, is joining Hellas Verona. But in this report, he said that he also rejected an offer from Austin FC, like in favor of the Verona offer. Like, you ask why we're reporting on a player we didn't get. I think this is a telling sign that Austin is in the market right now for a striker. And so this is very much still on the table, whether it be right now or in this next offseason. But Roto's shopping for a striker. And this guy played at Boavista in Portugal. Pretty good goal scoring record. I watched just like a YouTube highlight clip of him. Looks like he would be a good MLS striker. And a grain of salt, Transfermarkt has him listed as valued at 5 million euros. And so they are looking to spend some money on this position.
Yeah, and I think it's not just this one rumor, but just the fact that it's like at least the second or third relatively young European number 9 who carries a pretty hefty price tag that Austin's been linked to in some way. So I think it just shows that there's like ongoing ambition there, and that, we've talked before about how the deals that are made are more luck than anything, right? Because like so many deals are the ones that don't come to pass. Just shows, like you said, that Roto's being ambitious, and that Austin's out there fishing. Like eventually, there's the right player is going to come through. It's good to see this team like not this group not panic. And even when with Jussie started in a good run of form, there's no doubt that Austin needs another number 9. But like Austin's not going to overpay, or Austin's not going to go crazy until we find the right guy for this situation.
Right, and that's the point I wanted to bring up, is that like exciting in a much more boring way is that Roto is being disciplined and patient in this search, and is not just going to throw all the money at the wrong guy. And like Austin just did that so many times, where like by paying a bunch of money for someone doesn't mean it's going to make them a better player. Like, you want to pay the amount of money a guy is worth. And if the price goes above that, or in this case, maybe if you listed your price and the guy denies it for another option, you're being responsible in that spending, and are responsible in like the space within your budget that you're spending. And because in MLS, every dollar you spend on one player is a dollar you can't spend on another player. All right. Anything else before we move on to our Monterrey preview with Arch?
No, I think that covers it.
All right. Yeah, hang tight. We'll be right back with Arch Bell to preview the Monterrey match. All right. We are thrilled to be joined by Arch Bell to help us preview the Monterrey game. Arch, thanks so much for being here, man.
Guys, it is a pleasure to be on the show. Good to see you.
So I think a decent chunk of our listeners will know who you are and will have seen your work, or at least seen you in kind of Austin soccer online spaces. But I think there's probably a good chunk who won't know. So do you want to tell them why, when we're talking about a CONCACAF tournament playing against Mexican teams, that we're talking to a white guy named Arch?
That's a good way to say it, to intro it. So I've been fortunate enough to have worked different, I guess, soccer outlets, soccer media for a while now, and spent about 11 years working for CONCACAF, basically as, handling all their website articles, things like that. So covered CONCACAF extensively, national team and club competitions. So CONCACAF Champions Cup, plenty of Gold Cups. So all things CONCACAF. That's what I did for a very long time. I'm not sure if you guys were aware, but just this spring I've moved over. I'm now working for FIFA. So doing working for FIFA, but still doing a lot of CONCACAF coverage. So still definitely have my my ear to the ground on all things CONCACAF, including the under 20s that are going on right now. But certainly also attuned to what's happening in Leagues Cup, since that's also a qualifying event for CONCACAF Champions Cup. So yes, have been following both Liga MX and MLS for quite some time now. Both in a CONCACAF capacity and now in a FIFA capacity.
So if we have any suggestions for FIFA about rule changes or World Cup or anything like that, we can direct those straight to you, and you'll give them to the big men.
Yeah, by all means, please forward those along, and I'll make sure President Infantino on the team's chat sees that, and we'll get that squared away.
So we're gonna preview the Austin FC Monterrey game here in a second, but first off, I just want to kind of get your thoughts on Leagues Cup as a tournament overall, given that I think we're coming to this from a very MLS and Austin FC centric lens, but I think you probably have quite a bit more context and are seeing it a slightly different way. What are your thoughts on this tournament and like overall, and then how it's gone so far this year?
Yeah, I like it. I really like the tournament, and I think Leagues Cup could not have asked for a better debut year than they had last year. I mean, you got touched by the fact that Lionel Messi made his debut with Inter Miami in that Leagues Cup game against Cruz Azul, and then he scores the winning goal, like in whatever that was, the 94th minute. So really, it had the Midas touch from the start, and you had a great, just a series of great matches. And I love the fact that you have both MLS and Liga MX teams going at each other, and the entire leagues, each league, all of its teams facing off. I've always kind of had this long held fantasy of just maybe one day they'll merge and we would just have one big huge super league with Mexican teams and teams from the US and Canada. I think it would be insanely fun, but we do get this with Leagues Cup. I'm sure there are a lot of coaches and players out there who kind of maybe view it as a nuisance or a pain. They'd rather just focus on their respective domestic league. I understand that. But it is, I think, a great showcase. The games are insanely fun, a lot of them, as we witnessed here in Austin the other night. Like I said, year one was great. I do think they do kind of favor more towards the MLS teams. I think when you're talking about MLS versus Liga MX, like from a head-to-head point of view, I think the CONCACAF Champions Cup still represents the purest form of competition between the two leagues, because you're getting the best from each league playing home and away. But this is a really nice, I guess you could say, compliment to that we do get this month-long tournament. So I am a big fan of Leagues Cup. I love the games. I love the competition. I love the fact that we get to see, even the most random of Mexican league teams like we did last year in Austin with Mazatlan and Juarez, who we'll never see them in CONCACAF Champions Cup, but we did get to see them in Leagues Cup. So I am all for that. And I like to see, I'm a big fan of international competition. I always have been, of seeing teams get out of their comfort zones and get a chance to play against a team from another country. So I like it. And so far, I think we've seen some really great games. There have been a couple of snoozers. The all MLS games don't excite me as much. when Dallas played, who was it? St.
Yeah.
Louis is, I'm not going to be too terribly interested in that, but San Jose Chivas, yes, I'll watch that.
Well, one of the criticisms that we got this week, I guess a little bit about how seriously maybe Pumas took it, was like, we got these comments from the coach about, I don't know, he seemed to not be taking it that seriously, and then we got a lineup that wasn't like first choice. Like, is that just exclusive to like that club, or do you think that's representative of the attitude as the league as a whole, sort of about this tournament?
Yeah, I think when a lot of Mexican league teams use this tournament as a chance to play some younger players. They do that in CONCACAF Champions Cup as well, especially in the early rounds. I think it's actually there are parallels there. In the earlier rounds, you're going to see a little bit more experimentation from teams, but as things get further along, that's when you start to see the starters become much more regular fixtures in these games. So, I'm not gonna blame the Pumas coach for doing what he did, but then he lost, and so maybe next time around, like, okay, if I want to win, if I want to advance, I'm going to play my starters, because rest assured, when Pumas go back to Mexico City, and if they're the only eliminated team from this group, they're going to hear about it. They're going to hear about it from their fans. They're going to hear about it from the media. And
I think they're
sure as heck going to hear a lot
about
it more in Mexico than any club would hear.
Dipping into a little bit of Mexican media over the last couple of days, it seems like most of the discussion is less about celebrating victories and more about roasting the teams who lost. And Pumas is definitely getting some of the bigger criticisms from Mexican media, given that Austin is quite low in the table, and then that they were down a man for 70 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you get like the records and the Esto and the La Canchas of the world, like they start, the claws come out, because it's one of those, and it's almost like a no-win situation for some of those Mexican clubs, because you're expected to win. And if you win, it's like, well, that's because you beat an equipo molero, like a team that's not worth that much. And then if you lose, then it's humiliating, it's embarrassing. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all to see the criticism that Pumas are facing. And so yeah, maybe next time around in Leagues Cup 2025, Pumas might approach it a little bit differently.
I watched a clip from, I think the show is called Fútbol Picante, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is, just by the small segment I watched, I got an idea of what kind of show this is, and maybe shouldn't be surprised by how they treated it. But the main host started the segment by saying that Pumas should disappear off the face of the earth and nobody would miss them.
That sounds about right. Yeah, Fútbol Picante, they pull no punches there. That's the show where for years David Fautelson was on that show, and then he recently moved over to Univision or TUDN. But yeah, that's one of those shows that, like, anytime the U.S. beat Mexico in an official match, like a World Cup qualifier or Nations League or Gold Cup, that's like one of the first places where I'm going, just because I want to see the post-match reaction and meltdowns and stuff, because it's entertainment galore. Not surprised,
especially for an American in that context.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised to see, Pumas should disappear off the face of the earth. That sounds about right.
All right, let's get into this Monterrey game. Jeremiah, do you want to set us up with some context here?
Yeah, we'll set the stage. This is Tuesday night, so this is going to be the day the show comes out at 8 p.m. Because of the win in the first match, at one point, Austin secures advancement in the next round for Austin. Can still advance with loss, depending on how Pumas Monterrey goes. Mm-hmm. We got Bukari out for sure because of the red card, which we will have talked about by the time we get to this part. Finley and Obrian didn't play against Pumas, so they're fresh. So there's some wing options there. Do y'all think, do we see any other changes on the Austin side of things for Tuesday night?
I mean, Stuver, I guess, would he come back in?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about this in the other segment of the show, but I was not impressed with Cleveland other than the one big save he made.
Yeah, the first goal, tough. I would anticipate Stuver back in the 11 for Austin, perhaps.
Yeah, the other ones I would be thinking, I mean, you have to replace Bukari, of course, but then maybe we see Rubio come in just because Zardes has been starting so many games lately, and it's a slightly shorter rest period.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, I wouldn't want to see too many changes. I've been critical of John Gallagher on multiple shows in a row. I think for this kind of game,
that's true.
I like him on the wing just as a defensive option, a guy who's going to track back and do that defensive work. And then as far as just the flexibility he provides as well, like I want to see Gallagher stay out there, so I don't want to make that change. But then maybe Obrian on the right wing, maybe Rubio up top, but I wouldn't be sad to see Zardes start again.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, that's a very logical line of thinking, and yeah, I think in this case you wouldn't want to make too many modifications to a starting 11 that, I mean, was really good, was really impressive.
Josh Wolf also said in the media availability today that Svatak would be on the bench, but isn't quite ready to play and wouldn't be really in serious consideration to play. So that's setting some expectations there. Moving on to Monterrey. So I know Pumas is above them in the young Liga MX table right now, but Monterrey have to be the favorites in this group, right? They're just an enormous team, spend a lot of money on players. They had 3 All-Stars selected to the All-Star game last week in Columbus, in their striker, Baterame, Maxi Meza, their winger, and then Sergio Canales, the Spanish attacking midfielder, was also selected. He withdrew due to injury concerns, but it seems like it was kind of out of precaution that he will be available for this game. Mm-hmm. And then aside from there, you also have Mexican internationals, Victor Guzman and Gerardo Arteaga on their back line.
Yep.
And then Jesus Corona Tecatito is a guy who
exactly
one of the biggest names in Mexican soccer for years and years, and he's not even a starter for this team. And then for our listeners more familiar with MLS, Brandon Vasquez, who was the best striker in MLS for a year and a half or so, and then got sold to Monterrey. He's their backup striker right now, and so he comes on for 20-minute cameos for this team. So to kind of set the standard of what this roster looks like.
They're loaded. Think about it this way. Brandon Vasquez and Bertarami have 11 combined goals, 11 Leagues Cup goals combined in their careers. I think Vasquez had 6 last year and Bertarami had 5. Let's not also forget Hector Moreno on that back line as well. I know he's older, but still a guy who's a very skilled and experienced center back. So yeah, they're great. Sergio Canales in that just in that 10 role is so good. Maxi Meza is a player who thrives in international competition. This guy is when it comes in anything CONCACAF related, he always shows up. And so this is another player, Argentine, who's a very clever player, very good. And then you've got so much attacking firepower. Eric Aguirre is another really good player. The Rojas, the Colombian who they brought in, is good as well. Another winger with tons of pace who can go 1v1. Oliver Torres, who they've signed, who I think is out with a shoulder injury, but that's crazy. The guy who came from Sevilla and was previously at Atletico Madrid. I mean, they've kind of developed this little Spanish pipeline, which is pretty good. So Monterrey are, I would say, not only favorites to win this group, I think they're favorites to get to the final for sure. I mean, one of the favorites. I was shocked. I mean, I was certainly impressed by what Columbus did in CONCACAF Champions Cup by eliminating Monterrey. I mean, consider this, that prior to that, Monterrey hadn't lost a knockout round series in CONCACAF Champions Cup since before. Remember when CONCACAF Champions League started, when it became the CONCACAF Champions League in 2008, and then Monterrey won 5 titles. They never lost a knockout round series. The only other time that they were in CONCACAF when they got eliminated. They got eliminated in the group stage by a Panamanian club. So what Columbus did was incredible. But these are all still the same players for Monterrey that eliminated Inter Miami in the quarters. So yeah, they are so good, so talented. They can beat you so many different ways. And case in point, what you just said right there, Tecatito, who he's not that old. I mean, he's still really good.
31.
Yeah. So they're I look at them in Club America and it's I got to think one of those two sides is going to at least get to the final.
Yeah. And Josh Wolf talked about kind of their playing style and the media availability today. And I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Monterrey, but just looking at just some highlights, it kind of bore out what Josh was saying, that they are able to keep the ball if they need to, but they're able to hit you in counters as well. And then just lots of these highlight packages are them in their own attacking third, moving the ball around and just working a defense to death until they get a good chance. And that really scares me as an Austin FC
Yeah,
fan.
like switching, and then there's a hole and they fill it in. I will say this though, they've kind of struggled at the start of the Mexican season. 4 goals, which for them is quite low. You know, Vasquez is in a little bit of a scoring slump. That's why he's coming off the bench. But they haven't been firing on all cylinders, and their coach is a little bit under fire, Tano Ortiz. So there is some pressure there, and of course, there's the pressure that exists for them anyways, because they're a giant of Mexican football, and they will be feeling the pressure. And you know, the longer Austin can just keep this thing deadlocked and 0-0 and frustrate them, the better, because then they'll start to feel a little bit of a pressure and maybe start to press a little bit. And they have not been playing as well as perhaps they should be. Like, they've won 3 games, but all by the minimum, and they lost to Cruz Azul 4-0, which was pretty embarrassing for them. So now, granted, Cruz Azul are really good this year too. But I do think Monterrey are kind of struggling right now. You certainly hope that they don't find their scoring stride against Austin. Very possible, though. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think the first 30 minutes are just critical for Austin FC to approach this in kind of a pragmatic way and look to just, you know, to stifle, kind of thwart the Monterrey attack. Because I think they'll be coming out wanting to come really strong, especially in front of the Austin fans, because there'll be a lot of Monterrey fans there as well.
Oh yeah.
And so they're going to want to do that. They'll want to be the protagonist early on in this game.
So what I'm hearing is, like, I guess, like, number one, Austin should probably keep 11 guys on the field for as long as possible. Which
I would say,
no.
And your keys to the game, that's definitely up there.
And then two, like, yeah, it feels like Austin needs to just like play solid and play conservative and not let that midfield get stretched out in a way that does sometimes, you know, when the game gets a little bit stretched out, because it seems like Monterrey has a ton of ability to take advantage of that.
Yeah, you can't, for example, you can't have a situation where, you know, I don't know if it's like going to be like Ring or Johan Valencia. Somebody gets caught in the Monterrey half, you know, out of position, and then boom, you'll get, you know, put to the sword on a counterattack where they carve you up. So you're going to have to be really, really disciplined, and Austin's going to have to be really disciplined in how they approach this game. And you know, when you know, tracking back, you know, all those little things is like you cannot lose the ball in key spots, because they will absolutely punish you.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I'll be looking for is, like, part of why Austin was able to be successful the other night against Pumas was just the energy that they came out with, the fight that they showed. They rose to the CONCACAF occasion and did not look like the naive team that MLS teams do sometimes in these tournaments.
Yeah.
And if they can carry that energy over to this game, then that gives them at least a fighting chance to get some kind of result, or be able to hold their heads high after a loss even. But I could also see them maybe having a bit of a hangover, because they left everything on the field the other night. And I could also see that meaning that they don't have anything left in the tank.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And so you kind of hope that, you know, that's why I think just kind of they'll take a 0-0 at halftime, you know, sign for it right now. And the longer you can do that, then maybe if you can kind of feed off of that energy and that effort, then maybe you can get something out of the game, whether it's a point. And keep in mind, you get another point if you win a shootout. So if they can get to that draw and get a 4, and then maybe even like win the shootout, maybe you even end up winning the group. So that's something to consider as well. But yeah, it's a major test. It's a Monterrey team that's out to prove something, especially after they finished 4th in the Leagues Cup last year. They lost to Philly in that 3rd place game, lost to Nashville in the semifinals. And it's also a Monterrey team that's really desperate to like bang in a bunch of goals to kind of get themselves going on that end.
All right. Well, Arch, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge of Liga MX in the region with us. And yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good night, Arch.
All right, have a good one.
All right. We want to thank Arch Bell one more time. We would like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe where you get your podcast. If you like this show, if it has brought you joy or taught you something, yeah, leave us a review. It means a lot to us. If you don't like the show, just don't leave a review. Just stop listening. You don't have to do this. Nobody's making you. And then if you want to support us even further, we always appreciate you joining the Patreon. We'll send you some cool stuff and give you access to some special bonus features. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with a review of the Monterrey Leagues Cup game, perhaps previewing another Leagues Cup game in the knockout round, which will happen next week if it does. And then we'll cover any other Austin FC news that breaks. Until then, I'm Lennon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.